Hello, ladies and gentlemen. There are stories we grow up hearing. Stories of partition. Stories of pain. Stories of borders drawn overnight, not with ink but with blood and tears. And yet, even in these stories of separation, you'll find whispers of love. Of neighbors who shared meals the night before the trains left. Of mothers who still remember the laughter of a friend now called the other side. We were one. Before the flags, before the fences, before the fear, we were one. Before the divide, there was unity. Not perfection, not paradise, but unity. In the way neighbors shared sugar and tea without asking for anything in return. In the way a wedding brought together an entire village, regardless of last names, languages, or faiths. There was a sense of belonging that didn't need to be spoken. It was just felt, in the air, in the food, in the laughter of children playing in dusty streets without knowing the meaning of the word difference. You know, there's a way of being where all the difference, you see this shared history between India and Pakistan, it wasn't just political, it was deeply personal. It lived in the songs that echoed across the radio. It lived in the spices that danced in every kitchen. It lived in the way stories were told at night on charpais under the open sky about a time that was both simple and sacred. And then the line was drawn. A line that didn't just separate countries, it separated sisters. It separated childhood best friends. It separated people who never wanted to say goodbye. That day, trains became symbols of heartbreak, and homes became memories overnight. Some people left behind their entire lives. All they could carry was what fit in their arms. But the pain that never left. My grandmother used to talk about it. Not often, not in anger, but in a soft voice, with eyes that looked far away. She'd speak of neighbors who helped them pack even though they didn't know if they'd ever meet again, and how even in the chaos, there were moments of kindness, of strangers who offered water, of children who cried, not because they understood politics, but because they could feel the fear. That's the thing about shared pain. It doesn't choose sides. It doesn't wear a flag. It just aches. And yet, for all that was lost, there is something that continues to survive. A strange, unspoken connection. One that you see when an Indian actor is loved across the border. One that you hear when a Pakistani singer is played at an Indian wedding. One that you feel when, in the quiet of the night, you scroll through social media and realize that the jokes, the memes, the prayers, the struggle, they're not that different after all. Somehow, despite everything, the soul remembers. It remembers that we were one. Not just in maps, but in hearts. And maybe that's why the pain still lingers, because deep down we know what was taken from us. Not just land or territory, but the chance to grow together, to dream together, to fail and rise together. But pain has a strange gift. It humbles, it teaches, it reminds us what truly matters. And when we remember the pain that shaped us, we can also remember the love that existed before it, the kind that didn't need permission, the kind that just was. So maybe this isn't just about looking back. Maybe it's about choosing what to carry forward. Because even though borders were built with fear, bridges can still be built with hope.
And if we allow ourselves to remember not just the wound, but the warmth, not just the division, but the depth of our shared roots, then maybe, just maybe, there's still time to heal together. They said it was necessary. They said it was for peace. They said it would end the conflict, give people freedom, and make the future brighter. But no one talks about the real cost, not the cost in numbers, the cost in silence. The kind of silence that comes after goodbye, the kind that lingers when a door is shut and never opened again. Division didn't just draw a line between lands, it drew a line between hearts. It built walls between people who once laughed together, prayed together, built dreams on the same soil. It turned neighbors into strangers, familiar streets into forbidden paths, and memories into wounds. There are families who still carry old house keys from places they will never return to, keys that don't open doors anymore, only emotions. emotions of what used to be, of a home that was lost not because they sold it, but because they were told they didn't belong anymore. And what does belonging even mean? Is it decided by religion, by where a border falls? By which side of the line you wake up on one morning? They never asked the children. They never asked the farmers, the mothers, the school teachers, the shopkeepers. They never asked the ones who had to leave behind more than just belongings. They left behind identities. And no one gave them time to grieve. Some people lost their language, others lost their names, but most of all, they lost trust, because when a world changes overnight, how do you ever feel safe again? There are letters still hidden in drawers, letters never sent, because the fear was greater than the hope, because reaching out felt like betrayal, and loving someone from the other side became a secret too heavy to carry. What they don't tell you about division is that it's not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it comes in the form of a song you're not supposed to listen to, a film you're not supposed to enjoy, a friend you're not supposed to talk to. Because they are the enemy. But who decided that? Because when a mother cries, it doesn't sound Indian or Pakistani, it just sounds like heartbreak. When a father loses his son, the pain doesn't carry a passport. It just breaks him. The cost of division is found in the missed weddings, the funerals never attended, the festivals that once brought us together, now celebrated apart, each one reminding us of the people who used to be there. And sometimes the deepest cost is the one we don't even notice. It's the version of ourselves that could have been more compassionate, more open, if we weren't raised with fear. It's the stories we never heard, the friendships we never formed, the songs we never sang because someone somewhere said we couldn't. But you know what's stronger than division? Memory. It survives. It travels, it whispers across generations. It's in the grandmother who still cooks a dish from a village across the border, in the grandfather who smiles at an old black and white photograph and says, "That's where we used to live." It's in the eyes of people who wonder, what if the line had never been drawn? We can't undo the past, we can't erase what was done, but we can choose what comes next, because the cost of division has already been paid in tears, in blood, in lost years. The question is, will we let that cost go to waste, or will we use it to build something better? We owe it to the ones who were torn apart. We owe it to the children who are born into stories they didn't choose. We owe it to the human spirit, the one that still dares to believe, despite everything, that peace is possible, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, if we're willing to see each other again. Not as threats, not as enemies, but as people, just people, who have hurt enough, and who deserve more than what the past has given them. They were born into it, not by choice, not by fault, just by the timing of their birth. They opened their eyes in a world where the lines were already drawn, where flags had already been raised, where the stories had already been written, not by them, but for them. They didn't cause the conflict, but they carry it in the way they speak, in the way they're told who to trust and who to fear, in the way history is handed to them with one side always painted brighter than the other. These generations, they didn't start the fire, but they're the ones trying to breathe through the smoke. They grow up hearing words like enemy, rival, threat. Long before they know how to spell them, they learn how to feel them. Before they're even old enough to form their own opinions, they're handed beliefs. Not always out of hate, sometimes out of protection. But protection wrapped in fear eventually becomes a prison, and inside that prison they grow. They learn to divide before they learn to understand. They learn to defend before they learn to connect, but something inside them, something that wasn't broken by the past, it starts asking questions. Why can't I listen to their music? Why can't I like their movies? Why does talking to someone from the other side feel like betrayal? These aren't rebellious questions. They're honest ones, innocent ones, the kind that come from hearts that are still open, still curious, still willing to believe that the world doesn't have to stay the way it's always been. And slowly, some of them begin to unlearn, not to disrespect the pain of the past, but to make space for something new. Because while the generation before them remembers what was lost, this generation dreams about what could still be found. They dream of traveling freely, of sharing stories without fear, of standing next to someone whose grandfather may have once stood on the other side of a battlefield and seeing not a threat, but a reflection. Of pain, yes, but also of promise. They're the generation that grew up with hashtags, with social media, with access to a world far bigger than the borders they were born in. And through that screen, they see each other not through the lens of war, but through the lens of shared struggles. Both sides know the pressure of expectations. Both sides know what it feels like to be unheard. Both sides have mothers who worry, fathers who work hard, siblings who argue and then laugh like nothing happened. Because beyond the borders and the stories, real life is not that different, but still they live in the tension of loving their country while questioning its narrative, of honoring their roots while reaching for something more, of walking the tightrope between pride and peace. And sometimes they're misunderstood, sometimes they're told they're too idealistic, that peace is a fantasy, that division is permanent, but they keep going. Not because they're naive, but because they're tired of carrying a weight that was never theirs, tired of silence that feels like punishment, tired of a world that teaches them to fear people they've never even met. They don't want to erase the past, they just want to rewrite the future, one conversation at a time, one friendship at a time, one act of courage at a time. They believe not because it's easy, but because believing is the first step to change. And maybe, just maybe, they're the ones who will finally let the scars breathe, not to forget the pain, but to let healing begin. Because when generations are born into conflict, the greatest rebellion is not to fight harder. It's to choose peace, loudly, bravely, together. Sometimes it only takes a moment, just one, to remind us that underneath all the noise, the history, the headlines, we are still connected, still human. Still capable of loving one another beyond boundaries. It can happen at a cricket match. Two rival teams, two countries with heavy histories, the crowd divided by flags and jerseys, but then someone hits a beautiful shot. And even from the other side, there's a soft clap, a smile, because beauty in sport, in skill, in talent, it speaks a language beyond conflict. For a moment, the cheers aren't divided. For a moment, they are just people appreciating something together. It can happen in music. In the quiet of the night, someone presses play on a song from across the border, a voice so rich, so raw, it stirs something inside. You don't ask which country the singer belongs to, because in that moment, all that matters is how the song made you feel, and if it made you feel something, then it's already found its home in you. It can happen during Ramadan or Diwali, when you send a message to a friend you haven't spoken to in a while, just to say blessings to you and your family, and in return they say thank you. That means a lot. No speeches, no politics, just kindness quietly crossing borders like a soft breeze. These are the moments that don't make the news, but they make us human, and they remind us that unity doesn't always come from grand gestures. Sometimes it comes from the smallest acts of grace, like when a Pakistani fan writes to an Indian actor and says, "Your movie made me cry." Or when an Indian chef recreates a biryani recipe from Lahore and says, "It tastes like something my grandmother used to make." These little things, they're not little at all. They're pieces of a bigger truth we sometimes forget, that we've always been more alike than apart. There are weddings where Bollywood songs play in Karachi. There are Mehndis in Delhi where Coke Studio fills the air. There are classrooms in both countries where children share stories of their dreams, not knowing they've been told to fear one another. And maybe that's the most beautiful thing, that before hate can be taught, love shows up naturally, in curiosity, in laughter, in the innocence of connection. When a child draws a picture of the earth and colors it all the same shade, that's a moment of unity. When two strangers meet while traveling and realize they speak different languages but understand each other's eyes, that's a moment of unity. When people pray for each other, even when their gods have different names, that too is unity. And the truth is, these moments are happening all the time. They just don't get the spotlight, but they exist quietly, powerfully in our lives, in our hearts. Maybe we don't talk about them enough. Maybe we think they're not enough, but what if they are? What if change doesn't come from governments or leaders, but from these quiet moments between people who simply chose to love anyway, because love is always a choice. And in a world that keeps reminding us of who we're supposed to hate, choosing love is an act of courage. So hold on to those moments, celebrate them, share them, because every time you do, you create space for something new to grow, for understanding to take root, for peace to become more than just a dream. You don't have to change the world in one day, but if you can create one moment of unity, then you've already made it better. And maybe, just maybe, that one moment is enough to remind someone else that unity is still possible, even here, even now, even after everything. It's easy to feel tired, tired of the headlines, tired of the tension, tired of waiting for something to finally change. We've seen so much, heard too much, and felt the weight of wounds we didn't even create, but we carry them quietly, daily, because that's what generations before us have done too. Still, even in all that heaviness, something inside us refuses to give up. Something whispers, maybe tomorrow will be different, and that whisper is hope. Hope doesn't need a grand announcement. It doesn't always arrive in bright lights or loud speeches. Sometimes it's just a mother raising her children to be kind, even in a divided world. Sometimes it's a father telling stories not of war, but of unity. Sometimes it's two people from opposite sides of a border choosing to talk instead of turning away. We often think peace is far away, a goal too big, a dream too fragile, but maybe peace starts closer than we think. Maybe it begins in the way we speak to one another, in how we listen not to win but to understand. There's a generation rising now. They're not perfect, but they're brave. They ask the hard questions. They don't want to inherit the same fights their grandparents did. They want something better. They want to travel and see for themselves. They want to share art, music, food without fear or judgment. They want to know the people beyond the politics, because behind every border is someone who just wants to live in peace, to build a life, to raise a family, to laugh without suspicion, to cry without shame. Hope looks like that, like wanting more than just survival. It looks like two people sharing a meal and forgetting for a moment who was supposed to be the other. It looks like students from different lands working on the same project, realizing their ideas are stronger together. It looks like a message sent across social media saying, "I see you, I respect you." And yes, we've been taught to be cautious. We've been warned that things may never truly change, but isn't that what makes hope so powerful? That it rises even in places where everyone else has given up. You see, a hopeful tomorrow isn't just a fantasy, it's a choice, a decision made by everyday people who say, "I will not let bitterness define me. I will not let history chain my heart." That doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means learning from it, holding space for the pain, but refusing to pass it on like a burden to the next soul, because the most courageous thing we can do is not to keep fighting the same old battles, but to believe we can write a new chapter, one with softer words, one with open doors, one where children can grow up without learning hate before they even learn their own story. It won't be easy, there will be setbacks. Doubts, days when the noise gets too loud, but hope isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. It's about choosing to show up again and again with a heart that still believes in better days. Because every small act, every honest conversation, every open-minded gesture is a seed. And one day, those seeds will grow into something we've all been waiting for, a tomorrow where love is louder than fear, where borders don't silence dreams, where people aren't defined by where they were born, but by how they live, how they love, and how they lift others. That tomorrow isn't out of reach, it's already being built by people who dare to hope. So don't stop believing, don't stop trying, because even when the world feels dark, you might be the light someone else is holding on to. And that is how a hopeful tomorrow begins. Maybe peace won't come overnight, but hope. Hope can start now, with one conversation, with one act of kindness, with one brave heart that chooses to believe in something better. Let this not just be a memory of what we lost, but a vision of what we can still become, because between India and Pakistan, there isn't just a border, there's a bridge waiting to be built, and maybe, just maybe, that bridge starts with you.